What is up, everybody, and welcome back to Talkin Wellness Season 4.
Hello.
It feels so nice. We changed a little bit, as you can see. We even look a little nicer, I would say. But we're back. And gosh, I've missed this. I already feel like loosey goosey. I'm ready to have a whole conversation. I love it. And today we're having the mother load of conversations. But before we get into that, my name is Christian.
My name is Kayla.
It's your boy Michael. How we doing?
And today we have a very interesting conversation, and I want to invite you guys on this journey. As you saw by the title, we're going to be getting a little bit into something major that happened, a couple of weeks ago, from the point we're recording this, from the point you're watching this. Politics and wellness. I don't know if that's going to be the title of this episode. I'm going to wait until we have this conversation.
How do those correlate?
How can we find wellness in politics? This, of course, is being recorded after the result of the election.
Yep.
And the reason we felt so passionate, why we wanted to make this episode, is because we feel that there's been a very powerful movement of emotions amongst everybody in the U.S. And I think there's good reason for it.
And there's people celebrating. There's people that are uncertain, that are fearful, and so there's a lot of mixed emotions that goes into this landscape of the political climate. And so we want to honor everybody's emotions, and that's really why we're here today, is to talk about how do we come together, even if we have different political views, values, and ideologies, and still be able to work together as a community, love one another, have relationships, operate within obviously the same earth, because we're all on planet Earth. But we're going to talk a little bit about that, because there's a huge weight, I think, that's still in our communities, whether it be people that are celebrating or people that are, doing the opposite. And we all three, may have different political views, and we're not really here to get into necessarily our political views, but to kind of talk about things on a more bigger grand scheme.
Absolutely. So, I think it'd be smart if we just have a general conversation. What are those things that we have been seeing, especially on social media? I'll just give a quick example. I've been seeing a lot of people criticize each other to a degree where it's becoming a little unsettling. I feel the internet has always been this kind of weird battleground where it's normal to criticize each other, and to a certain degree, I'm okay with it, or I'm not okay, but I guess I just don't think about it that often. But now it's become very prevalent, where there's a lot of people attacking each other on every side of the spectrum. So what do you guys think about that?
I mean, this is a very controversial race, as we all knew. I will say I'm pretty conservative. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Republican by any means. I'm a conservative independent, I would say. So typically whatever candidate is going to appease those policies and views that I have,
sure,
who I'm going to usually go for.
Yeah.
And
sure.
Trump had a lot of things that I looked for in a president: anti-war, anti-immigration, good economy. Those are literally the most important things for me. So I understand people's when they vote for people based on their specific priorities, based on abortion, different things like that. So I absolutely understand it. With that being said, I have gotten into a lot of arguments and debates with people.
Same here.
I could say that I was very good with them, but I wish I could have been better with certain talking points. I would get emotional and frustrated with a lot of times people would disagree with me, and I think that's something I could have worked on. But at the same time, I think it was a great opportunity for me to learn that. I had two specific conversations I'll mention. One with a girl I used to actually train personally, fitness and stuff like that.
Exercise.
And she is a completely opposite view of me. I'm conservative. She's completely liberal. So she had a lot of opposing ideologies to me. And when our conversation had started initially on Instagram, it was very, kind of, what's the word? It was aggressive, and there was very it seemed like non-productive things being said towards each other on both sides. Not really. I don't think I was really saying anything, but I don't think I was really adding anything to the conversation that I could have initially.
I feel you.
Yeah.
I feel you on that.
So after maybe 30 minutes of us going at each other, I kind of realized that we're two different people. We're gonna have opposing views, and the best thing I could do is look at why she feels this way and why it's obviously such a passionate topic for her and why she feels that way. and maybe it could come from a place of ignorance, or maybe I'm ignorant.
Yeah.
So that's when really the conversation started to change. And at the end of the day, we left it knowing we were different people, and had different ideologies, but we were very civil. Like, even at the end, I said, I'm like, I know we're very different, but at the end of the day, like, I wish the best for you and your family and all this stuff. And she's like, I don't hate you, Michael, but we do have different views, and I wish the best for you too.
Which I think is great insight, honestly. Okay, so there's a couple things you said, right? One is that when you first kind of introduced even like your views, is that it's not black and white. And I feel like the political like polarization that's happened has made it so like you're either red or you're blue. And it's like this like
it's hate. Like red or blue, and then it's turned into like right or wrong.
Correct. And there's this hate. That's actually really good.
That's very insightful.
And it's like you're exactly right. You're either right or wrong. And what you acknowledged in that conversation is that you have two completely different people that have probably two completely different upbringings, that have two completely different thought processes, perspectives, and ideology. Not to say that one is right or wrong, but she believes
we could both be right.
Correct.
The biggest thing, and the point that came to me was like, maybe we're both right. Yeah. That's really when I really started to see the conversation in a different light. It's like, I'm trying so hard to convince her she's wrong, but maybe she's right on her set of priorities and her perspective.
Yeah, that's
so
good
insight. It's impossible for me to like try to teach that out of her, especially because she could have grew up a different way.
Absolutely. And I'll say this. I heard this quote this past week, and I cannot tell you where I heard it. I don't remember, but it was for me, it was so more impactful to the point that I didn't remember where it came from. But the quote said, becoming an adult is realizing that two things can be correct at the same time, or two things can be right at the same time.
That's good.
Absolutely. And I love that idea because, especially now that we're entering this very divisive political period in our country, right? I think that despite our disagreements, despite things that we feel passionately about on certain topics, I think there needs to be some sort of middle ground.
100%. Well, I think essentially too is, when we look at, because when I'm an advocate and I consider myself an advocate. And so when I look at things that I want to change, I don't look at it from a red or blue color. I look at like the things that I'm trying to change or the things that I'm fighting for in policy is bipartisan. So it could be either party. This is a human challenge that I'm seeing in our communities. And so when I'm going to address a, political representative or leaders in our community, I'm going to make it relevant. I don't care if you are a Democrat or a Republican. If you're in office and you're serving as the person, the point of contact for my community, I'm going to bring this issue and make it your issue too, because the challenges the challenges that we're seeing is like a human process. And so I don't look at, people, I don't look at people as like, it would be the same thing as if I judge people by their religion. I don't judge people by their race, ethnicity, like all of those things. Yeah. But when I look at making decisions, I think everyone should vote because it's your right as an American to vote. And I also like the idea that like Americans are having conversation. Like we should do that, right? Think about like in school when you were voting for your high school president and all these things, people were rallying around people. They were, like those things were happening. That is our right. So whether you're rallying for the Democratic side or Republican side or this person, the fact that you're rallying and you're participating in the democracy is what excites me.
And that was something that like was a big thing for me. Because this girl is someone that's very active on Instagram, posts a lot of stories and is trying to educate, So that's one thing I definitely appreciate in general. Like whether you completely disagree with me is the fact that you can get up, you can do your research, you can figure out what's important to you, and you can go vote for it. Yeah. Because there's the people that absolutely will just talk crap and they won't do anything.
Exactly.
So those
or they're not educating themselves and they're just picking. It's like what is it called? The bandwagon, right? I'm going to bandwagon to the extremism of whatever. But I actually appreciate when people go and they educate themselves. I actually like to have conversations with people that have completely different views than me because 100%. It sharpens. Yes. I grow as a person.
Agree.
We know that like growth happens in diversity, and I honestly wish what I could see come from all of this is that we begin working together and have a checks and balances as a United States of America, because there has to still be unity on the human level, and I think that that's something that to me was really sad watching this kind of election, is to see just how much relationships are like completely pulled apart because of different views.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because now I guess I'm speaking this from a more personal level, familial level. What I don't like about this election cycle is that I feel that there's been a lot more division in the sense that I know there was criticism back in the last two elections. There's always been criticism, but this one feels especially fueled because I see it in my family. Especially, I don't want to mention specifics, but there's a certain side of my family that's very passionate about one side, and sometimes you feel it in the room, right? Where the rest of us are kind of like, I don't want to talk about this right now. Why are we? So I do think that there's also this level of toxicity that can occur if we're not careful. If you don't read
it's definitely been one of the most divisive presidencies we've had in a long time. Yeah. I just don't think a lot of people, back to what we were saying, is like a lot of people care now.
Yeah.
They're more willing to talk about this and more willing to share information about these topics. I just don't think people cared in the last kind of presidential elections, like the last two especially. They cared when Trump got elected, and I think that's maybe when this whole let's start putting the media coverage on this.
Yeah, we're going to talk about media too, because I think that's a huge.
Legacy media is a completely different.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that point, I think there's one point we do need to talk about. And you kind of alluded to it earlier. There's this really interesting thing that happened where there's a lot of people speaking out, right? Like, oh my gosh, I don't like the results, or I love the results. But there's this huge number of people who did not vote. I don't know if you saw this.
More than half the country didn't vote. It always happens.
Right. But like, it's interesting to see this passion come out on social media and around the people.
They're the most passionate ones, the ones that don't vote all the time.
The numbers don't match the passion. That makes sense what I'm saying?
You know what's funny too? I was always going to talk about this. The abortion topic, the number one thing that people complain about. The reason, like the thing that everybody has such an issue with, Trump literally delegates that to the states, and if you wanted to change, go vote.
Yeah,
100%.
But the reason people are so against that is because they don't go vote. The main people that don't vote are the ones that have issues.
I have to say that too, because I think a lot of the time, and this is another struggle that I see, is that people put so much blame on like who the president is, but they don't realize that these laws pass at a local level.
They think the president does everything in the country.
And
like
that's not how it works.
He goes to war. Let's go to war. It's like, no, there's so many checks and balances that go through the Senate and the Congress in order for them to do things.
If you want change around something, you need to rally at your local and state government.
Look at the marijuana thing. Did we have marijuana now? Is that because of Trump or Biden? Neither of them.
Right.
It's on the people.
We voted for that.
It's the same thing with pregnancy laws. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Because of Trump.
Right.
If another president were to take charge, they could change that.
Right.
They could say we don't want any. They could say we want full abortions or we don't want abortions. He's giving us the choice.
Right.
So I don't understand how that's the biggest focal point for a lot of people on like why they don't like it.
I think it's a lack of education that people
100%.
are not doing their due diligence sometimes to understand like how does a law become a law? Well, and what part do we have in that? So if I felt strongly about something that I wanted to change in the legislation, first of all, I'm going to go start to educate my community. I'm going to go start to talk to my legislators,
even the testing. Look at the testing strips that we got legislated.
Passed. Yeah,
that used to be illegal. You used to go to jail for that.
Correct. And now it's not.
If you want something to change, you get someone that's going to make a strong voice for you. Champion it for you. You vote for them, and that's it.
Yeah.
Vote a day. It's such a simple thing. That's democracy. That's what democracy is.
I 100% agree with you. Can I bring a potentially
absolutely
I don't want to say controversial question, but a question that might bring some good conversation into this. We're in Florida, right? And one of the things that I find a little achy about the way laws work here is the 60% rule. You know the 60%, right?
Yeah.
It's not a majority; it's a major majority.
Yeah,
it's a major, right? And I do want to bring this question forward because I think it's important to talk about. Do we think that's necessarily fair?
60 versus 50?
Right, because the majority of I would just want to say, and again, we're definitely not gonna pick sides here. This is not what this podcast is for.
I think I understand,
but I think it's really important to mention. 57% of Floridians voted for the abortion law, and it did not pass. That's majority. What do we think about that 60% thing?
I think it's like you said, it's a great point. But to that point, I think it could easily be passed. Like it could easily get to the 60 if those people that are ignorant and complain and all this stuff get up and vote.
I agree.
So I don't think it's an issue of the people or the lack of votes out there. I think it's the people not getting out and voting. But back to that point of it actually being a majority but it not winning, I think I understand it to a degree because it's like if someone's not doing, it's like in sports almost, like if there's a boxer who's a champion and someone comes and fights him and he does just as good, you're not going to give him the champion status over the champion if he did just as good. He has to beat the champion. He has
Exceed
to
it.
outperform the champion.
Analogy.
That's kind of how I look at it.
Okay.
Like if you're coming to take my belt, you got to take my belt, not play as good as me. So you can
I think I see what you're saying.
I see what you're saying too.
Thing, it has to be almost like a definite. It doesn't, like, let's say if it is 51% to 49% and then they change it and then it's like, then it's
okay.
like, dang, that didn't work out. I think it's back to that, like they search for the 60 because it's more of like a confirmation of like, for sure they want this. Like, we're not going to make a mistake.
That makes sense.
That's my personal opinion. I don't think there's really, nobody knows.
60% of people choose, it passes. I think that makes sense.
Like, let's say if we had something,
makes sense.
let's say if we had something here at South Florida Wellness and we're like, hey, we're going to have a Christmas party and do you guys want this or this? And then half the people went this way, half the people went this way. What are we going to do really? There's no decision made, right?
50-50
So you need a little bit more of a majority for that decision to be made sometimes. I think that's what it is. To a degree.
But see, and this is where it gets interesting because I agree with you wholeheartedly what you just said. But now let's break it down to the most basic principle.
Oh, for sure.
Us three. Let's say you and I have a specific decision about the podcast. We're like, yes, let's do it. And then Kayla says no, right? What happens in this situation? Majority rules, right? So and that's where for me it gets. Now you could argue, well, Kayla,
we wouldn't do that ever, but
Kayla has a higher
as a
role,
podcast, but
right? You could argue those arguments,
but I think we actually do that sometimes when we're planning things out because we look at like, what do we think?
We
and
do
we'll
it like
say,
very civilly.
Yeah. It's this weird 50-50, right? Where to a degree, your point makes sense. 60%, it's a firm thing. Like 60% of the state was like, absolutely.
Which means it is
even like if you're going to go eat out with someone and you guys are, if I'm like, I don't really care what I'm going to eat, I'm going to go with what they want. Versus if I'm more than 50% convinced of what I want to eat, we're probably going to go to where I want. It's kind of like just, 50% is very much a threshold of like, I'm indifferent.
Do you think 60% is too much?
No. Like, what do you mean? Do you think it should be like 55 or something is what you're saying?
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. I really haven't this is the first time I'm putting this into thinking.
It's such a very like specific thing where I'm sure there's a person that has a job somewhere deep down that understands why these things work the way they do.
Yeah, and
I don't,
Yeah.
But it's a good question. Yeah.
And the reason I bring it up is because ever since I'll never forget in high school when I was taking politics and in college too, and one of the biggest things that just never really clicked in my brain is the idea of the electoral college, right? I don't understand how
I love it. I ain't gonna lie, I love the electoral college.
And that's fine, but I don't understand how you can win the popular vote, as in more people voted for you.
Well, you gotta understand
still
that.
Lose.
Well, look at New York. Look at California. They're the most liberal states in the world. They have the most people in the world. You can't say that the whole country has to follow them. That's unfair.
But what about Texas? What about Florida? What about Georgia? What about Kansas? They're all
They all have a set amount of electoral votes.
But that's the point that I'm making is that, for example, I think this election is one of the best examples of this, right? The last election, I believe Biden won the majority vote, right? So I
think he won the last two. I think Trump lost the 2016 one too.
Exactly. Trump won the majority vote
this year. He won everything.
He won everything this year, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the point
a terrible candidate. Sorry, guys.
I swear we're not picking sides. The point that I'm trying to...
hard,
I love Democrats.
No.
Like, I would have voted for... If there was another Democrat like Vivek or Tulsi Gabbard or someone, I would have voted for them over Trump.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is, too, is
Kamala.
it's so hard that you have only two people, right, that are really... I mean,
thing.
because you had like a couple little...
You guys realize that Kamala was going for president this year, this candidacy in the Democrat Party. She came in last in her party.
Yeah.
Least amount of votes.
Yeah.
Well, No, I get you, and I want this to be an open space because.
But that's over. That's done with. So
yeah, but I know, but there's a lot of listeners right now that are sharing your same viewpoint. So I think it's fair to allow this space to happen. I could bring in and talk about positives and negatives about different people, and we can do that. But the point is that notice how we're doing it civilly.
Of course, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
As much as I get passionate and stuff, I don't ever want to make anyone feel uncomfortable.
Like
at all.
Yeah. I think that's the most, for some reason, the hardest thing for so many of us. And I was on that boat. Don't get me wrong. Back in 2020.
But I honestly feel, I swear,
politics,
this
religion,
is how
man.
I feel though, is I feel that society and media, they are it is being created, this whole environment where it's created where you can't have different views and sit together.
Especially in politics and religion, because I think there's such specific things that attest to who we are as people and tells us who we especially on the outside of this is if we're a Christian conservative, people are going to view us a certain way.
Yeah, but I even think that politics give Christians a bad rap. I don't like
100%.
Wholeheartedly agree.
That's my point.
Wholeheartedly agree.
That's my point.
Just
Those
because
two
I'm a
separate,
Christian means that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Those two separate people more than any other for the simplest things so far than anything.
I've had people tell me, you can't be a Democrat if you're a Christian. And I go, where does it say that in the Bible? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
What do you mean I can't?
Yeah.
There's this standard
there's
where
not
it's
good candidates on both sides.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a lifetime Democrat, but in recent years, I have turned not Republican, conservative.
Correct. Well, because you vote based on your values,
and
you
beliefs.
Focus on this is what, because my voting doesn't look all black and white. I will research somebody and see how they align with the things that I believe and the stuff that they're doing. And if it aligns and I'm looking at, my research, then I don't look at colors.
Yeah. Because even RFK had a lot of things that align with me.
Yeah.
RFK, a lot of things aligned with me and a lot of things he said.
Right.
He dropped out. And guess who's endorsing? Trump. Guess who he works with now? Trump. Guess who he's
Why do you think he dropped out?
The FDA. Yeah, he lost.
Because he knew he was going to get a sweet job.
100%.
But we're not picking sides. We're not picking sides.
True.
Okay.
But listen, this just goes back to the polarization, because it used to be that people
You're going to go work for someone you do not like for a job just because of the job.
Absolutely.
Then that just tells
I promise
that's
you.
your
think so?
person.
There's a lot of people that will do that because they just want the power.
Then that shows your character flaws.
Well, I don't think that. I think
you have to have something that you stand on.
Yeah.
And all the people that switch from Democrat to Republican
and vice versa
to work for who?
I mean, I can't name them right now, but
I can name you 10.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of Democrats that say things, they make a lot of points, and they're like, this, but I can tell you confidently, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Vivek, they all switched from Democrat to Republican, and they've been on they've been campaigning for Trump when they were former Democrats that ran against him. I've never seen that in the history of the United States. It's never happened.
Because it's not black and white.
But that's what I'm saying.
I know.
We're saying that people would do that, but they don't do that. That's not a normal
No,
thing.
we never really know because we don't know what they're personally feeling on the inside. That's the thing about politics is that a lot of people have these beliefs and they declare them. Look at Kamala. It's a great example. It's like back when she was first running, right? Mm-hmm. Or when she was doing her own thing, she was saying one thing and this other thing. She agreed with this, she agreed with that. But then when she ran for presidency, her views changed. Trump did the same thing.
When she was
Biden did the same thing. Obama did the same thing.
When she was an attorney, she was known for putting people away for jail as long as possible.
My point.
Throwing the keys away, but as a president, she's supposed to be this person that's going to hand out us things, take care of us, do all these things. She's a black woman that's never been declared as a black woman ever in her whole life. It's just there's so many lies that come from that. I don't know.
The point that I'm trying to make is, and this is more of a generalized view on this, I think that a lot of politicians are willing to publicly change their views because they want to gain power.
True.
You know?
Yeah,
and
I would agree with that.
It's 100%. Let me say this. I think it's unfair to just assume that somebody wholeheartedly believes something and now they're standing on this higher ground, this is the right thing. When in reality, all the facts show that the majority of people who run for office constantly are changing their views.
I agree.
Because
I agree with that too.
They're trying to gain the popular opinion.
I think that
I agree.
what we can do as people with constituents within our community is get to know our politicians. Because like even for me, like getting to know like our local mayor, getting to know my commissioner,
that's more important than anything.
Building relationships, right? Because then I actually really get to understand like it's a hard role. I pray for all our leaders. I don't care what color you represent.
Absolutely.
They are in a difficult role of leadership. Like people think that it's just like, oh, I call, blah, blah, but that is like a huge responsibility.
Absolutely.
And it's not easy. And they're up against a lot too. And so it's just, I think from the perspective of what can we do, in the sense of if we do want to engage in policy and law and understanding political stuff, is like get to know the people who are actually in your local communities that are serving in those positions, and start there, because that's going to help you to also understand like who you do agree with, and that even though somebody may represent a party, it doesn't mean all of their beliefs and values are encompassing that party. Life is not black and white. I have certain values and views that are one way, and then I have other things that I look at, and I look at what people are doing that may be on the other side, and I think this way, and I think that the people on this side need to be a little bit more educated on specific things that are important to me that they don't understand yet. And I think one of the best forms of advocacy is education, right? And also for me to get educated on like, why do you think the way you do? And why do you choose this person and like this person and believe that they're the best candidate, blah, blah. Because then I'm going to learn what your perspective is. And that's also how I'm getting what my community thinks, So when I'm going to represent something, no matter what the cause is, the reality is I need to educate also my community, like the people that are constituents, to say they need to go vote on this. Because like you said, it happens at the polls with our vote for amendments that are going to go through.
All those laws, abortion, weed, all those things they're at our feet. They're not at a president's feet.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a four-year change, a president.
choice.
And that's every year. Those laws come every year.
That's why
pregnancy, marijuana,
absolutely.
state laws, districting laws, they're every year.
Housing bills,
every year.
The new teacher bill that came out that now they need
every
to be
year. Great point.
We get new things, right? My biggest thing is that like one of the biggest pleasures that I had, I'll never forget this, and I hope she's doing good. My politics teacher, when I turned 18 during my high school senior year, she said, "This is my birthday present to you," and she gave me a ballot, and she said, "This is the most important decision you're going to make in your entire life. Choose wisely." And from there on out, I immediately realized the importance of my voice, because that's the thing. And I want viewers to really understand this. You have a voice. If you're happy with the results, if you're unhappy with the results, I get it. Trust me, I do. My kill was open. I'll be open. I wasn't necessarily happy with the results, right?
I was.
Right, and you were. And but that's the thing. We still have a voice.
Can I ask you why you're not happy? What do you think? What made you? You're unhappy because Kamala lost, obviously. But what made you unhappy that Trump is president over Kamala?
Well, I've shared with you openly before my personal feelings towards him, towards his character, towards the kind of person that
like
he
racism
is,
and stuff.
towards his rhetoric.
Do you not think Kamala's racist? I think she's one of the most racist
I don't think
people
this
out
is
there.
this is the conversation that we're having right now.
Why is it not?
Because the point that I'm trying to make, again, we're trying not to pick sides here.
And it's not about picking sides. It's about like understanding why you think the way you think and why I think the way I think. I could tell you why I think the way I think.
Yeah. Well, I've been open with you in the past. Like, I do think
I feel
that
if you don't want to share
there's
it,
a couple things that he says, does, thinks that I just don't think
But that's like such a rhetoric. Cool. And the reason I'm asking you, it's such a rhetoric that I hear from everyone that doesn't vote for him. And it's just so, like, it's such a biased media taught thing to think. Because nobody thought this way about Trump 10 years ago, before he was president. Everybody thought he was a great entertainer. He was a super cool guy. He was awesome. Everybody wanted to hang out with him. They were friends with him. And now when he became president, because he was on the right side, or on the right side, which is the side that typically doesn't have a lot of media coverage or good media coverage, everyone hates him. But during his 4 years, there's no bad things that happened under him other than COVID, which had nothing to do with him. It's crazy because I have friends. I'm not trying to come at you. I have friends that are like, I don't like Trump because he's racist. I'm like, bro, how is he racist? Like, I don't understand. There are so many people that have stereotypical way they think, the way they talk. Even I could be low-key racist. We could all low-key be racist. the way Kamala talks to people. I sent my father sent me a clip, and it was all of her speeches talking to all different races, talks to them all differently. That's one of the biggest forms of racism. Like, there's just certain things like that. I feel like the left is very good at manipulating and very good at tricking people into thinking a certain way. And I think the right, the conservative right, like Trump voters, they think a certain way, and it's always going to be thought of as like this negative, like very aggressive way of thinking. But at the end of the day, it's just like, this is traditional values, and what a lot of the way they think is just how it's always been. Not saying there's things that don't need to be changed, because I think there's a lot of traditional values and a lot of things that Republicans think that don't work. That's why I'm in the middle. So I think it's just like, it's a very like weird topic, and that's another thing what I was saying in the beginning, where like even I find myself struggling to like find the balance of not trying to get too passionate, but also having that conscious part of me to like understand where they're coming from. So it's just like an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I like
no, that's
rambled.
okay. I mean, do you guys
and I don't mean to like ever come off
and that's okay. I tend to be a person, because of the different positions that I have in my life,
and you grew up certain ways. Yeah.
I try my best not to share political beliefs, because I don't want people that I work with
to think of you
to
differently.
think of me differently. And not it's not that I'm not proud of my choice or I'm not okay with my choice. It's more along the lines of, I don't want people to think because I made a choice that was different from theirs that I can't be a supportive person, that I can't
True.
be
And
a
as much as
person
that, like,
can provide services for that person.
And as much as like that sucks, and like I don't want to do that because of that reason, I absolutely 100% agree with you, because it's a valid thing. There's a reason why celebrities and a lot of people don't talk about certain things, because it loses work. I absolutely understand.
And not just
like
work. It's because like
relationships.
I said, right now we can have a civil
like
conversation.
relationships with people.
Yeah, but there's certain situations where people feel passionate.
Like if
about
I said
something.
everything I'm saying right now to everybody out there, I'm sure
There-
a
people-
bunch of people out there would think differently than me, for sure. But
Yeah,
at the same
absolutely.
time, I want them to know that, and I want them to know consciously they could think differently, and there could still be that positive place.
Well, that's what made America
That's what I
great.
want. It doesn't work all the
but
time.
that's what made us to me.
But I
still feel like we
yeah.
have the greatest nation
True.
because we could come here and have like that free liberty of
Right.
thinking differently.
But I
speech
understand
and
to
all
your
those things.
point, not
I
everybody will
me
do
too.
that.
No,
Right.
but I
Yeah.
think, and this goes back to like how media has actually like, I feel has been a huge way that they have created where it's not safe to have conversations in diversity. Because like when I think about like when I sit down and I do
Which sucks, right?
yeah, it sucks. It's
freedom
a
of
horrible
speech,
thing.
right?
Well, it is horrible because I think that we grow in those diverse conversations that we have. And I think
Absolutely.
about all the other things that I do where I have people from all different walks of life come to the table because we're looking at community solutions for specific things. And I have people that come from different backgrounds, believe different things, have different ideas, and we will all come in a space to work together collectively and have these conversations. And it like is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, it's awesome. People are like, wow, like this is so enriching because we're growing, we're learning, we're doing all of these things. And whereas it sucks that this is how it is now, where like you really can't in order to hold whatever image or whatever. And I do believe it's because of what's been portrayed media wise of you have to like almost pick a side. Like, why do we have to just pick a side? Like, why can't we have different we'll never be completely the same.
Yeah.
Even if we had the same views on certain things, I guarantee you if we sit down and talk, there's going to be other things that may be different. But doesn't mean that I'm not going to like want a relationship with you any less.
Yeah.
You know? So I don't know. Those are the things that I think when we think of politics and wellness and like how can we contribute to creating a space where it is okay to have differences, where it is okay to sit down and have a like debate that's respectful and everyone gets to talk and share their points and walk away like still having a relationship, but understanding that you have two different people. But now I understand a little bit of why you think the way that you think. So I almost have a little bit more with that understanding, maybe compassion for the things that you are prioritizing in your life. And the fact that you're participating in the democracy, well, that's a beautiful thing.
Exactly. And then I just want to this is a thought that I had as we kind of start closing off. You know, Thanksgiving is coming up, and I think that this is the peak moment of stress when it comes to these type of topics, especially this upcoming Thanksgiving. So I would appreciate if we could all share one wellness tool that we can utilize when those conversations happen, because sadly I know they will, and they won't be as civil as us in this table right now. So what's one wellness tool that you would utilize to kind of support people who are going to go into these dynamics and things might get a little heated?
I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing is if I step into a space where I may be mature enough to have a conversation, but the other person is, it's self-awareness to recognize that I don't have to have this conversation with this person.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, I think that's the biggest thing.
You can say no.
Yeah, like the reality is I might be well enough, but if another person isn't, then I'm not going to step into that space because I already know that it's going to cause something. You know, I think when we get emotional, because I get very passionate about things too, you know, and if I sat here and started to spew my passion, you'd probably see it, you know, but when I get passionate, I always have to like kind of take a pause, take a deep breath. And I usually let people know, sorry, I'm really passionate about my views. So I'm not coming at you. I'm just, you know, having a discussion and I may get excited. Just know that that's passion, not anything. And at any time you can, for sure. Cause I know I'm a passionate person, you know?
Yeah. One that I would share, it's okay to walk out of the room.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people take that for granted, the power of just being able to quite literally step away. You're not verbally saying no, you're physically saying no. Like, no, I'm not going to do this. Let me step away. That's what I do in a lot of tense situations when I feel those conversations are going nowhere. I just step out, you know, like, you know what, it's fine. I don't need to be in this space at this moment. So that's one that I utilize a lot. Michael?
I mean, physical wellness tools, I go to the gym all the time. And that's just something that helps me physically get through things and channel, I guess, a negative emotion.
After the hearty meal, go to the gym.
Yeah. I mean, it's just something I truly like, because I like doing handstands and stuff like that help me connect mentally to my workout.
Cool.
But outside of like physical stuff, I would say a wellness tool.
Yeah,
I don't know, probably a wellness tool, but I would.
Well, that is a wellness tool.
Yeah,
that's a huge one.
That one.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I'm saying like another one that's not physical. I would say try to like a wellness tool. I would say try to find like an ability to find like not meditate essentially, but to find someone to talk to. Peace. I do prayer.
Yeah.
Prayer is good for me.
Yeah.
And
Meditation or
it's something
prayer,
that's very.
Yeah.
It's always been in my life. God's always been in my life, but very recently I've taken a strong commitment to like praying and just having more of a non-secular thought process on life and thinking a certain way as to why life is the way it is. And
Good for you.
That's helped me a lot.
That's awesome. I think that, and I also hear in what you're saying, reflection, which I think is huge. You know, asking, and even in this space, like with the topic we're talking about, is like, ask yourself, like, why do I believe or think the things that I think? And if it's because you watch this thing on TV or you do whatever, I would encourage you to do a little bit more research. I would encourage you to learn about some of the things that maybe you want to know about, that maybe you stand for something, but you don't know why you stand for it. So when you self-reflect and you start to ask those deeper questions, I think you really start to understand like what are your actual values. And then you can look at, you know, what's going on and see like where would I align with, and learn more about the individuals, right? Because I think sometimes there's a lot of like, there's so much information out there, but is it good information, you know? And so that's like the biggest thing too, that I would say with regards to all of that. Yeah.
So yeah, with that being said, thank you so much for watching. This has been a very, very interesting conversation.
I have one more thing to add.
Yeah.
One more thing to add. Okay. My last thing to add is, I know that a lot of people do say like your most important decision is, you know, voting. But I am going to push back on that, because whatever happened, which is out of your control, right? Our most important decision that we make on a daily basis is who we choose to be and how we choose to show up in the world. And so you can decide that, and I promise you the level of influence that you have is there, right? We all have a level of influence because we're in contact with whoever it is that we're in contact with, but the most important decision that you can ever make is a decision to really work on you.
Yeah. And I want to add one more thing to that. Oh, my ADD brain.
You forgot?
Yes.
It's okay.
I was gonna say like contrary to like this whole like candidacy and all this stuff and everybody having like opposing views, I think it's really important to stand on what you believe in, obviously, but at the same time I think it's very important to dude, I lost my whole train.
Listen, maybe? Is that what you're trying to say?
I was gonna say I think it's very I think it's very important to not lose relationships or friends or anything like that over things like this.
Absolutely.
You really have to take like a weighing scale as to what's more important to you in life sometimes. And I think if you think like what people like policies and things like that, like people pushing things out there, and if you choose that over people that you've cared about for a long time in your life, that's a big L. So I think it's very important for people to realize that nothing in life is constant. Things are always forever changing and evolving, and that including our brains, and to not let people, including myself, make you feel judged or anything about the way you think, and to just always, however you feel in the moment, stay true to who you are.
Yeah,
that's really
and honestly, like to me, like the one thing that keeps us all unified is like humanness, right? Like we're all human beings. So I always think at the end of the day, like I'm gonna love you regardless of all of those things, and we'll probably grow in relationship if we are open enough to talk to each other.
And if you fall victim to like that fear of not wanting to upset someone, then you lose that bit of humanity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast wherever you can. For our audio listeners, we see you, we love you, we care about you, and we thank you. Please give it that 5-star review if you can. It really helps boost the popularity of the podcast. And other than that, we will see you all next week.
Stay well.
Stay well. Bye-bye.